and welcome to Media Week. I'm Ingrid Willinch. Ahead on the show today, APN News and Media goes digital heavy at its Investor Day this week, plus the latest in the radio space and why it's seeing success with social media. But first, in the world of streaming music, Pandora is not only the oldest, dating back to 2000, but is the biggest and the slowest to expand overseas. Currently operates in only 2 markets outside the US, New Zealand and Australia, and distinguishes itself from other digital competition by calling itself a radio business. The company's Vice President of Advertising Product Management, Jack Krofcheck, was visiting Australia for the first time this week, and he spoke with Media Week's James Manning. James, of course, joining us in the studio now. James, you obviously met with him this week, but how do you see the competition in this space? Because we've got Spotify, a lot of news coming out of it.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. Spotify just did a deal this week with Starbucks. They seem to be doing very well. I think a big profit still eluding them. Ardio's another one. They had a recent price cut to try and get their numbers up. We've got iHeartRadio starting to make a bigger noise in this market, so it's a really interesting space to watch.
Why is Pandora only in 3 places, though, in your view? I mean, in just Australia, New Zealand and the United States?
It's because they don't make their own content. Like Netflix own a lot of their content and they can move into other markets easily. They can do content deals. It's a little bit more controversial getting the broadcast rights. Pandora meet a lot of opposition from the radio sector in the US in particular. So, yeah, it's just not as easy for them. And I think they've really had a focus on building up in their home market before spreading out. I think it will come, though. We'll start to see them rolling out internationally pretty quickly, I think. All
right. Well, James started by asking Jack Krofcheck about his trip to Sydney.
That are advertising customers for Pandora here now that we are over 2.5 million registered users in Australia, and talking to them a lot about the attention economy and how, as we develop ad products at Pandora, we think about the importance of attention as it relates to creating advertising that truly resonates with end consumers.
Is there different strategies for Pandora in different countries depending on the size of the market and whether you're still building audience or you're more focused on advertising?
Yeah, so Pandora is now available in 3 countries. So we're in the US, Australia, and New Zealand. And what we found is, as the business scales, the way to capture consumers' attention really does factor into the importance of understanding creative and how it connects with consumers. And based off of that, creating personalized recommendations for our advertisers on how to best engage. So it's not necessarily a country-by-country discussion for us. It's very much how do we interact on a personalized level with each of our advertisers to provide the best experience that they can get with our product.
Now, just tell us too, is there a difference between calling yourself, because it's Pandora Radio, but it's often referred to as streaming as well. Do you like to be in one camp or the other?
So we think of it as Pandora Internet Radio. We've been live for nearly 10 years in the U.S. and from the very beginning, Pandora's promise was we wanted it to be one-click internet radio. And so from our perspective, in the same way that when you enter into your car and turn your car on and music starts playing, that's very much the focus of what we aspire Pandora to be. So it's very much, in our minds, radio is the closest analogy to the overall consumer use case.
Yeah, I mean, you can treat it different ways too, depending on the consumer, how much they want to tailor what they're listening to. I mean, you can use it literally as radio by almost just turning it on, or really drill down and tailor your listening tastes. What do most consumers do?
For the most part, consumers will create several radio stations that cater to their various music needs. So whether it's listening to today's hits or music that reminds you of a certain time in your life, they just tune to those stations and they create mental models of, for me, for example, when I listen to my Otis Redding radio station, it's really about remembering early on in my relationship with my wife when we started to bond over our love over Otis's music, and every time I listen to the station it reminds me of that. And so people create these mental models of what certain artists and genres mean to them in their lives.
You've been a bit of a disruptor to the traditional radio broadcasters. You make most of your headlines, it seems, through interaction. People complain about your licensing deals, perhaps, or that you've entered the market without paying your dues. Now, would you like to get on with the other people in the radio industry? And is it sort of different for you in the US as it is here?
So, I mean, in my focus area specifically, I'm mostly looking into how we best connect our advertisers with our listener base. So, on the licensing side, I mean, ultimately, one of the things that's very core to our DNA is we believe that artists should earn their fair share, and Pandora is already the highest-paying form of radio, specifically in the United States. And so, we take a lot of pride in that, and our ad product is really meant to reflect. We want to create a sustainable revenue engine to make a meaningful impact with our listeners, and we take a lot of pride in wanting to continue to be the highest paying form of radio.
What's your message to advertisers? Do you attract advertisers who are maybe, stepping back from traditional radio, or you're getting people who are maybe going into this sort of audio advertising for the first time?
So it's certainly a combination of digital advertisers as well as terrestrial radio advertisers. And as we've built out our product, we really just want to connect the best audio advertising to our end listeners. And so as we work with traditional radio buyers, it's very much talking about how reach and frequency translates into a spot style buy on Pandora versus a digital buyer. We have a different discussion around catering it to some of the metrics that they're used to transacting upon, but ultimately it's about finding the right audience and sustaining their attention for a certain period of time and generating ROI activities. And ultimately, when you focus on that ROI, you start to see repeat business coming back. And so for our business here in Australia, we're now at a point where about 70 to 75% of our customers that are buying with us are actually repeating and coming back and buying more. So we're very encouraged by the results that we're driving for those advertisers.
So the data you must be able to offer your advertisers must be pretty impressive. Is that what attracts a lot of them and then keeps them coming back?
So yeah, we pride ourselves on a lot of the insights that we can generate for our advertisers. So even just to begin with, when listeners register to Pandora, they provide us with their year of birth, their gender, and their age. And that alone actually sets us apart pretty significantly. If you have a campaign that's targeting adults between the ages of 25 to 54, we ensure that only that audience is going to receive that message, and you're paying only for that audience. And so we create that form of precision, and as the campaigns run, we're able to provide unique insights within that audience to show this message resonates better with this cohort of your audience relative to another one.
And you said 25-54. We'll just drill down into those demos. What's your core offering, or is it pretty broad?
So it's fairly reflective of the overall population. There is a slight skew toward a demographic range of 18 to 34, as I think there's just a general technological skew to those ages, but we do get a pretty significant portion of our listeners that do map into the 35 plus range. In-car listening is big for traditional radio. Yeah. Are you making much sort of gains there? Yeah, so in-car has very much a large part of our strategy. In the U.S., 10 out of the top 10 cars that are sold in the United States have Pandora installed in them, and in Australia specifically, over 60% of all cars sold this year will have Pandora installed. And so we're very bullish on the prospects of, especially as connected cars start to come onto the road, we would like to be in a world where you have your AM/FM button, you have your satellite button, and you have your Pandora button.
And in terms of clutter, the environment, if I'm advertising on Pandora, what can I expect? Will I hear long ad breaks, or are they short, and how often will they interrupt the music?
So we focus on creating the highest ROI experience for our advertisers, and to create such, we focus on creating a really high share of voice for our advertisers that come to us. So for our ad breaks, they'll happen once roughly every 15 minutes, and it'll be one 30-second interruption. So over the span of an hour, a listener shouldn't hear more than 2 minutes of commercials. And what that allows our advertisers to do is really capture that attention for a sustained period of time and engage that audience and not necessarily be distracted with another message. And so by focusing on that really concise ad pod, what we're able to do is continue to drive that ROI that's bringing our customers back in large numbers.
And does that research is very well, I guess, with your audience, that sort of lower ad load, if you like. Yeah.
So we're always looking to what is the impact of advertising on sustaining Pandora, because ultimately our goal is to be the effortless source of music discovery for the billions. And in order to do that, you need to make it accessible to everyone as possible. But it also requires revenue to flow through so that we can pay our artists their fair share. And so as we think about ad loads, it's very much about balancing supply and demand to a perspective where we're continuing to keep our listeners engaged and happy with their service. But also from an advertising perspective, we want to make sure that the demand that's flowing through is generating the most ROI, because we don't want to create a dilution effect where you're going to get less ROI from your advertising because we've increased too much advertising into the experience.
Let's return to James Manning now for more on just the news out of the media space this week. And James, we've been watching the radio space and how it's been engaging with Facebook in Australia, and it's actually the best in Australia in terms of the media sector. Yeah,
it was an interesting survey this week. It looked at the first quarter of the year, Jan through to March. The sectors that have the best engagement with Facebook users in Australian radio comes way out on top. You know, the thing was the top 30. They ranked radio had 7 of the top 10. Interestingly, the Today's Hit network had 5 of those top 10 spots, and there's some of the stations that haven't been performing so well in the ratings, but they're doing a really good job of engaging on Facebook.
Interesting. And speaking of radio, Nova, they've sent their breakfast team over to Hollywood. What's been going on there?
Yeah, look, Fitzy and Whipper have been in Hollywood this week. Look, I always love it when a radio show goes on the road. Some people in radio don't think so, because they think the listeners think, oh, these guys are just out big noting. But I really like it as a listener. It takes you out of the usual what the radio shows does normally.
Does it do well for ratings as well?
Well, it's hard to tell, because I don't break down those ratings by show, so you don't really know. But I think it does, because I think it's exciting. It's been a really good week for the program. Fitz and Whip, and the Entourage movie was the reason for going there. I think it was sponsored by the distributor. So we heard a lot about that this week. There's been lots of other things. They had Jessie J was in there, who's coming up on the Voice as a judge soon. Melissa McCarthy, who's got a new movie out, Spy, this weekend. Will Anderson, who lives in LA for half the year, he came in. So it's been really some interesting stuff.
All right, well, also let's talk digital businesses, because TripAdvisor this week has announced a deal to take over Dimmy. What's going on there? Yeah, Dimmy's looking, go online, you can book a restaurant, you can check ratings for restaurants. So, yeah, TripAdvisor's getting into that space. They've taken them over. Massive site. If you ever go on holiday anywhere, TripAdvisor's a must-go to check out some of the stuff. Of course, they did a deal earlier this year with Fairfax for their traveller segment, so really embedding themselves into Australia, TripAdvisor. We're seeing a lot of acquisitions in this space, actually. Sure. News Life Media's Kids Spot as well. We were talking about this just the other week. It released some research this week and also relaunched one of its online brands. Yeah, look, KidSpot Kitchen was the part of their offering that they relaunched, and that's, look, you can go on there for kids and cooking, and they've added a lot of, really ramped up the research facility. They've got lots of videos in there, nutritional information, and it's sort of a parenting go-to site, if you like, run by News Life Media. All right, well, there you have it. And now we've got doing our media movement segment, where, of course, we see some media executive movements this week. Wade Kingsley returning to radio. Yeah, look, Wade Kingsley worked a long time for Nova, DMG Radio, back before the name change. He got out of the sector briefly, went to Visium. He's come back into radio, going to work for Southern Cross Austereo, head of ideas and integration. I'll get that right eventually. Ideas and integration. It's a great title, isn't it, head of ideas? But he'll be working both with content and with the ad teams there, so just generating some revenue. Another movement that there's a lot of speculation about is James Warburton's next move. Where's he expected to be going? Well, I think he might replace Reece Holloran at Southern Cross Austereo. Some people even saying he's been offered the job. I'm not sure if they're really that far advanced in the search to replace an executive, but then sometimes, you know, a board says, look, we don't really want to replace the executive until we know who's going to replace him. So, would he be a good choice? What would he bring to the table? Well, I think he would. I mean, he's really... Advertising is his strength, I guess. That's his background. So working with the advertising, but he's also well aware of the significance of crucial content. You know, that drives it all. So I think he could be good. But maybe he thinks, look, my job's not done at V8 Supercars yet. So we'll wait and see. Southern Cross has been struggling though, so we'll see what happens there. We do need to take a quick break at the moment on Media Week. Coming up next, though, we'll take a look at why Tan has blitzed the ratings this week, plus the controversial comments about Hamish and Andy by ARN. Details on that next.